So one of the most common questions we hear is, how long is this going to take? And it's a very fair question. From the outside, a backyard court can look really simple. Concrete, maybe some fencing, a hoop, some painted lines, and then you're done. But in reality, a quality court project has a lot of moving parts. You have design decisions, scheduling, site prep, concrete, surfacing, weather, and sometimes HOA or city approvals. All of those things affect the timeline. So instead of giving you a vague, it depends, I want to give you the most realistic normal timeline we would tell a homeowner today. So for a modular tile court, a normal timeline is usually about 6 to 8 weeks. For an acrylic court, a more realistic normal timeline is usually 10 to 12 weeks. And the reason acrylic usually takes longer is after the concrete is poured, you typically have to wait at least 30 days for it to cure before you can paint it. And if you paint it too early, the coating may not adhere correctly. Acrylic is also much more weather dependent. Rain can delay it, cold weather can delay it, and in most cases, we do not like painting in the winter months. So depending on the time of year, that timeline can stretch even further. That said, one of the biggest things homeowners misunderstand is not always the actual construction time. It's the project queue. A lot of people assume that once they sign, work starts right away. But in reality, your project typically starts in the order people sign on, and that's really the most fair way we can do it. The actual site prep and concrete phase for a standard court often takes about 1 to 2 weeks once we begin. But if there are 4 projects ahead of yours, that could mean waiting 4 to 8 weeks before your project even starts. So that waiting period is normal. And that's a good thing you're going with a company that has a waiting period. And honestly, it can be very useful time if you use it well. That's a great window to finalize landscaping plans, think through irrigation, trim trees, or work on anything else around the court before the crews arrive. Once construction starts, things often move very quickly. But depending on the season, whether it's peak season or slower time of the year, your overall timeline can still vary. We also see certain site conditions add time more often than others. One of the more common issues is having rock below the surface. That can add both time and cost. Another is slope. If the yard has slope, the project may need retaining walls or turn down beams, and that also adds time to the build. And then there are approval issues. Some areas have very few restrictions, and we can move extremely quickly. Other areas have HOA requirements, city requirements, extra paperwork, or longer review processes. In those cases, the timeline can change a lot depending on where you live. We see this play out all the time. For example, we had a client in Fredericksburg who signed up, had no HOA restrictions and no city restrictions. We were able to start the following week, and that court was completely finished in 3 weeks because it was a modular court. On the other hand, we had a client in Lakeway who signed up, but we had to wait 8 weeks just to get the proper paperwork in place because of HOA and city regulations. Same type of project category, but very different timeline. And that's why it's so important to look at the property, the approvals, and the season before assuming how fast a project will move. There are also a few things homeowners can do ahead of time that really help save time. Before the on-site evaluation, one of the best things you can have ready is your property survey. That helps us identify setbacks, easements, septic systems, septic lines, and other things that can affect whether a court can go where you want it to go. A lot of homeowners assume they have enough room, and then the survey shows an easement or utility issue that changes the whole layout and the whole plan. It also helps if you research any HOA restrictions before the visit. If there are known rules about fencing, lighting, placement, or setbacks, it's much easier to plan correctly from the start. Then, before crews arrive, one of the most helpful things you can do is have a plan for your irrigation system. If there are sprinklers in the work area, it saves time when there's already a plan for how those lines will be adjusted. It also helps to trim trees that hang over the court area, especially if they could interfere with us installing the fencing or any other components. And one more practical tip. Let your neighbors know work is coming. That may not change the schedule on paper, but it can definitely help the process go more smoothly. The visible construction may feel fast once it begins, but the planning, scheduling, approvals, and curing time are often what determine the real timeline. And the best projects are not the ones rushed to the finish line. They're the ones planned well enough to drain right, play right, and hold up for years. If you're thinking about building a backyard basketball, pickleball, or multi-sport court, the best next step is an on-site evaluation so you can get a realistic timeline for your property and avoid surprises later. As always, your court advisor is there to help you navigate and mitigate issues along your court building experience.